Our next speaker probably doesn't need much of an introduction, but I'm going to introduce him anyway. Jim Skaggs, he's one of our award winners for this weekend, and he's going to talk about, right here in Austin, how to fight and beat rail projects. Jim also owns a couple restaurants in town, 3. If you get a chance to go to Jack Allen before you leave town, I recommend it highly. So Jim Skaggs.
Thank you very much. I want to thank all of you for coming here, by the way, and it's probably my last chance to do that. I've been trying to get this American Dream Coalition conference here for, I guess, since the beginning, 12 years ago, and we finally achieved it, and I'm really pleased. It's a perfect timing for Austin with a new city council structure that started this year, and the subject that you're addressing is right on target for Austin. Because with all of Austin's successes, it is facing some really tough problems, and I don't think its leadership even understands how to approach them. Anyway, let me get on to rail. Let me start with 2000. In 2000, it started a little before that, but in the year 2000, we had one of the most popular mayors that Austin has ever had in history. He's now a state senator. And we had one of the greatest local heroes, Lance Armstrong, at the time still a hero. And he was on television every week pushing for this light rail that they were trying to put through. And of course, the entire city structure, the chamber, all the chambers were in favor of it. A small group of us decided it'd be probably the worst thing in Austin's history. And as Jeff has, I think, underlined, by the way, Jeff was a big supporter of ours in those days, too, as head of the TPPF. But as he's identified, a small group of people with committed, dedicated effort can make miracles happen. Everybody told us we were crazy. It was impossible to defeat this structure. And the voting population in that election was Cap Metro area, which is beyond Austin. It goes into Williamson County, it's a more conservative area, into western communities, small communities, which are more conservative. And so it wasn't totally Austin, as in a minute I'll explain the 2000 election. We lost in the city in that election, by the way, by a few votes. We won eventually 1,950 votes out of 250,000 voted in that presidential election. And all night, it was the latest decision in that election ballot set of issues. It was 2 o'clock in the morning by the time they finally concluded that we had won, because it went, they're ahead, we're ahead, they're ahead, we're ahead, they're ahead, we're ahead. And they finally capitulated at 2 o'clock in the morning. The motto we used then, which was credited by many of the opposition as being the killer for them, was cost too much, does too little. And it was not a tax issue because there were no taxes being asked for. So we had to come up with a different major focused message. And I'll talk about in a minute, the key, I think, to winning these elections for us has been to determine on the front end what is the message and to stick with that message consistently all the way through the campaign. That somehow unsettles the opposition and has always kept them in turmoil, trying to fight us versus us trying to fight them. And I think that's been a major factor in our ability to win. Well, 2004, as people mentioned earlier, they came back with a commuter rail. And the commuter rail, we met and talked about what action should we take. And we concluded that because it was small dollar value compared with the several billion-dollar rail they had proposed in 2000, that we would not oppose it in a formal campaign. We opposed it certainly if we talked to reporters and so forth, but we didn't go out and we didn't debate and we didn't make presentations and we didn't put signs up and all that. And the reason we did that is we concluded that since they were using an existing track, weren't going to be tearing up the streets, minimal impact to congestion because the tracks are already being used by freight trains, that we would probably have them go ahead and if they won, put the train in, and that would be the best way to prove with a physical evidence that these things don't work. And yes, it was going to cost a few $100 million, but that may be the cheapest way out in the long run. Otherwise, they just keep coming, and eventually they might win. So that's what happened. It did, as Vince said, cost several times what they estimated, both in capital and in operating cost. Vince mentioned the capital cost. In operating costs, they said in that initial publication to the voters that it would be $2 million a year to operate it. When it opened 3 years late, it was $10+ million a year. It rapidly has gone to $14 million, and they're now projecting $30 million in the next few years because they're going to increase the frequency of that train because they got that $50 million federal grant. So it is continuing to do part of our work for us by proving that it doesn't work. They have less than 2,000 daily riders, and it's not very cost effective. By the way, that rail passed 62 to 28, so it was a pretty healthy win with the voters. In 2014, jumping ahead, we had the same team, but this time the voting was the city of Austin only because the city of Austin decided that Cap Metro was unable to get a train through the system, and the city mayor wanted one very badly. So he basically pushed Cap Metro aside and took over the train effort. And over a several-year period, he had committee after committee and all kinds of deceptive efforts building up to the election last year. In fact, it was going to be on 2 or 3 earlier years' elections, and something happened each year, and it got deferred, so it was late. But we achieved a decision, a decisive victory of 57 to 43. Now, that 57 to 43 is a lot more decisive than the numbers because now we were dealing with the city which won in 2000. And so we converted a winning population to a losing population with a very healthy margin. Now, what changed? Well, we had a different model this time because this time the city was going to be requiring an increase in taxes. And so at the same time over the last several years, the cost of living in Austin has grown dramatically. So people are beginning to have affordability as a high priority, right up next to congestion and mobility. So we came up with a slogan that said, "Won't help traffic, will raise taxes." And as one person said, we had more signs in the city than there are stop signs. We had a very plain sign. It was, if you looked at 100 election signs a block away, you could always tell which one ours was. It was plain white. It stood out like a sore thumb, as they say, and it was recognized by everybody. Now, one of the things that I did in the beginning, talk about how to approach it and tools, is thought about what are the things that are important in this election, and I picked 5. We had a new city council running from 6 council members and 1 mayor, all elected at large, to 10 individual districts electing their representative and a mayor elected at large. So at the same time, the rail election, there are 78 people running for city council. And so I took the task of educating as best I could all of the city council people running that would listen. They came out in the beginning, about 10, maybe less, a couple, 8 or 10 of them came out formally against the train when they first started campaigning. Within about 2 months, 2.5 months, 80% of them announced they were against the train. So now I've got 70 people roaming the streets and talking to people about being elected, and they're against the train. And that's the way we spread the message without us having to carry the burden of talking to as many people. In this time, as you saw last night, Dave Dobbs, in 2000, we were violently opposed because that's the route that they wanted. And so we debated, we fought each other. But in this election, they were on my side. They thought that that route that had been chosen would be the last time train would ever be seen again because it was such a miserable route, low ridership, et cetera. So it was a kind of a strange situation, sitting at the same table with the enemy last time, being on your side this time. But their thought was, we defeat this, and then they turn right around and go back to get the next election on their route, and that is what their goal is. The tech community in the first election was very strong for the train. In this election, the tech community was a non-factor. And I found in meeting with some of the tech groups, just to get a feel for them, that this is more important to them than trains. With the Ubers and the Lyfts and the technical capability that this has. And so I left that meeting, two meetings, with the view that tech community would not be a factor. The tech community invested hundreds of thousands of dollars to support the train in the first one. And in this one, they've invested almost nothing. Social media, of course, was new, so we had to consider, Facebook and Twitter and all these things I know nothing about, and that became part of our campaign also. And I want to show you, though, some of our ads, if I can figure out how this gadget works. Do I just push A button?
I got it, Jim.
Oh, you got it. Go ahead. Well, first of all, I want to show you a couple of key points with some slides. This is the picture without that pink that a Project Connect, which was doing the PR, basically presenting this to the community and getting community input. So they presented always this full picture, and giving you the impression that what you were voting for was that full picture. What you were voting for was that pink line, which most people said goes from nowhere to nowhere. Go ahead. Skip this. Go ahead. This is the route, 9.5 miles for $1.4 billion. And next chart. The key that nobody presented until we began to look at it and figure out that in fact, let me go over here. This is downtown Austin. This is the state capitol. This is right down the middle of downtown Austin. The train would run between downtown Austin and 35. A huge portion of the daily traffic into Austin comes from 35 South, 35 North, and East communities. Every train would have, every car coming into downtown Austin would have to cross that train track. And going each direction, that's 5 minutes to separate the trains. So it would be a huge congestion point getting in and out of Austin, which of course they don't talk about. And one city council member I debated said, well, Jim, that's what red lights are for. But anyway, go ahead. I want to move. This chart I came up with, which was to compare 3 recent toll roads, 290 East that we were on our trip, 183A that we were on our trip, and MOPAC, which is being worked on. And if you take those 3 toll roads versus the 19 track miles, that's the double 9.5 miles, you got 9 times. You've got 175 lane miles versus 19 track miles. Down at the bottom, you can barely see that today's value for these two were roughly $1.1 billion. So I wanted to compare apples and apples in cost. These will serve when that MOPAC opens in about 12 months. It'll serve 500,000 trips per day. I originally said 215 because MOPAC was supposed to open this year, but it'll be next year. And so and going out to 2030 when the train is supposed to start operating, I said 700,000 people a day for the 1.1 billion versus, they said 18,000 boardings, 9,000 people, only 3,200 of the train riders are going to be new transit riders. So it shows you the value.
Did you use boardings for the 700,000 on the freeway as well? Is that boardings?
They're trips.
Boardings? As opposed to
Trips.
trips?
It could be 3 people in a car. I don't know. I'm talking about number of vehicles. Yeah. Okay. Go ahead. And this is a chart of ridership in the 4 major Texas cities. You can see Houston at the top, coming on down Dallas, San Antonio, and Austin at the bottom. Austin's been flat, slightly down. Houston's taken a big hit, so that was the backdrop of spending billions of dollars on transit. Go ahead. This is all the cities' populations in blue added together, and all the cities' ridership in red. And that's, I think, consistent probably across the nation. Go ahead. This is Austin. Population in blue, transit ridership. This is commuters. On the left, of course, is drive alone, and over here, the 5th one is transit. Carpools are greater, work at home is greater, and other, walking and biking, is greater than transit. Go ahead. And this is the percentage share of commuters. Austin is bigger. Dallas has spent billions, has the longest light rail in the nation, and it's well less than Austin. Go ahead. Go ahead. Go ahead. Now I want to show you some ads.
Google the word deception, and don't be surprised if Austin's Proposition 1 pops up. Over $1 billion tax dollars.
Can't that go louder?
Rail system, but for one line, to and from places where almost no one lives. And the $400 million for roads will add no new lanes to our congested roadways. Austin's Prop 1 is deception. That's why over 80% of city council candidates oppose it. Join them and vote against Austin's Prop 1.
What? They can't connect to that?
You want to hear it again? He turned it up the other day at the boxes, at the speaker itself.
Is it coming out of the speaker or the computer?
That's coming out of the computer.
Why was it doing? Yeah, we were trying to figure that out earlier. Why is it?
No idea. So, you want to hear it again?
No, I've got some others, but
Yeah, we can use this to pick up off the
oh,
speaker.
great.
But Austin's Prop 1's not the answer. Rail will increase congestion and cost taxpayers $1.38 billion for only 9.5 miles of rail. $145 million for miles. Less than 1 quarter of what was $400 million for road projects. Will that be
Isn't it coming off the computer speaker, not that?
It's something bizarre that happened this morning. We can't figure out what's going on.
Okay. Probably need to.
Right. Hit the next one.
You guys think we know what we're doing?
Can you play the next one?
I'm going to give it a shot.
Oh, you're back to Randall's slideshow. That happened yesterday, too.
And what about Austin's Prop 1? Over $1 billion for 9.5 miles of rail. They say it's not the length, it's how you use it. Maybe the rail line can buy itself a convertible at some point to compensate.
Get the next one.
Okay.
They're just 15 seconds.
You know what the cruelest joke of Austin's Prop 1 is? That $400 million they're promising in new roads, guess how much of it will be used to build new lanes? Zero. The joke is on us, guys.
Next one.
about Austin's Prop 1? Over $1 billion for 9.5 miles of rail. That's $145 million per mile. That's $27,000 per foot. I don't even have a joke for that. That's just hilarious.
Go ahead. He's got
And what about Austin's Prop 1? Over $1 billion for 9.5 miles of rail. That's over $27,000 per foot. I'm sure it'll be made out of fine Italian marble, so don't worry too much. They say it'll move about 9,000 Austinites a day. You know where you could take 9,000 Austinites for over $1 billion? Outer space. Yeah, it's $150,000 per rider. Tell you what, give me $150,000 and I'll sit at home and watch Sports Center and not take my car. Probably be sold. They're willing to do it.
Thanks very much.